All right, everybody. So, welcome to Live from My Drum Room. And it's a pleasure to welcome my guest today, a very dear friend going back all the way to the 1980s. Please welcome the great Roger Guth.
Thank
All
you,
the,
John.
all the way back to the 1980s. All right.
Yeah,
Okay. Here you are.
I see you. Do you see me?
I see you. You can't hide from me. I want I want everybody watching at home to know that you did everything you possibly could to not do this today. And I appreciate you being here.
It's getting kind of funky. I hope we can get through this.
I hope so too. I hope so too, buddy. If we can't, we'll do it another time when you pay your Comcast bill. I would have thought that all those years with Jimmy Buffett, you could afford internet service.
Yeah, I know. Well, you got to cut back somewhere.
Man, I mean, you own half of Nashville, and but
I don't yet, but my son probably will.
welcome, Roger. Yeah, I was just saying that I liked the way you tried to sort of dodge doing this today when you said I don't do interviews and I don't. But thank you for doing this.
Only if it's a pretty woman. That's the only time you do the interview.
Well, I'm close. I'm close. So
You are. You're very good looking. You could have Kelly come down. Then we can do the interview.
now we're talking about a good-looking woman. Exactly, a pretty woman.
Yeah, I always thought she was very cute.
Yeah, me too. Well,
What did Colin used to say? Colin used to say, "John married well."
I definitely I did okay. I
With
did.
that English accent of his.
Yeah, I saw
He
Colin.
called me. I guess that's probably he was down and he lives in Savannah or something.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's great that he called you. I saw him. So I'll tell you quickly. I was at the Zildjian 400th anniversary. Big concert event they held in Boston back in September. And Craigie Zildjian, the owner, my former boss, invited me and Kelly, and she invited Colin, who came up from Savannah, and we sat together. And Rick Murata was there with us, and um, so yeah, we had a great time. And Colin and I were able to catch up a little bit, and we stay in touch too. So that's great.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's great. Um, so we got some folks watching. We got no doubt some parrot heads in the crowd, I'm sure. It's great to see you, Roger. And in all seriousness, I'm sorry about Jimmy. I reached out when he passed away, and I I'm sure like a lot of people, I thought of you instantly, and I just your long association with him, and I'd love for you to share some memories if you would like to about working with Jimmy all those years.
Well, if you have any questions or anybody does, it's still kind of weird for me. It's just like you wake up someday and go, wow, Jimmy's not here. Like it just doesn't, I'm like, and I
Yeah.
know that's, life, but it's also like, I never thought of it that way. I would be like,
Yeah.
you know, I always thought he would, live longer than, I don't know. He always seemed very vibrant. But
Yeah.
then in the past year, you could tell like, something's not right here.
Yeah. I was just going to say from all the times I would go see you and see the band, he seemed at that time he was in his 50s and just still very vibrant and energetic and yeah, seemed like someone that would go on for a long time. But yeah, we can come back to that. I'm sure people will ask questions, and I think people would be interested to know how you started playing with him. I know you joined the band in '89. Does that sound
Right.
right?
The short story is me and Pete and Jim Mayer had a record deal with Warner Brothers as a group called PM, and Elliot Shiner, who's like the famous engineer guy, he loved us. He was producing our record, he was going to produce Jimmy's next record, and he wanted us to play on it. So, and we were like, sure, we'll play in the studio. We're studio guys anyway, right? Or, we did some of that or whatever. Anyway, so we went up to New York at the Hit Factory, played with, and I actually wrote, Elliot liked my writing. So I wrote some tunes with Jay Oliver actually, and we were the rhythm section.
Mm-hmm.
And then, long story short, Jimmy's like, oh, I really, I like these guys. So he kind of got rid of his other rhythm section and hired us. And I was just kind of like, well, we'll do this for the summer, and see what happens, Then 34 years later, it's like, okay, well.
And that's when we met was 1989. I had just started at Zildjian, and our mutual friend, Dave Weckel, recommended you.
Right, right.
And I remember I drove up to pick you up at the Four Seasons in Boston, where you would stay every year. And
right, I love that.
yeah, who doesn't love the Four Seasons? And and I'll admit, Roger, I knew I'd been hearing. I remember you and I talking that first time, and you were saying, not in any sort of, by any means, any sort of boastful way. You seemed to be almost surprised. You were like, "Yeah, man, this tour like is really doing crazy business." Like we I think you were kind of surprised at how well Jimmy did as a touring act. And I remember like you guys in the Rolling Stones that summer were like the highest grossing concerts or tours of the year, or amongst
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy was, I didn't, I wasn't a follower of that kind of stuff. So I just didn't know. And then when the first time you play with him and there's 16,000 people there, it's like, holy shit, this is the big time. This is as big as it gets.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
doesn't get any better. You're flying around in private jets and playing to sold out amphitheaters. So, I mean, I don't know where you go from there except stadium shows, and we've done plenty of those.
Right.
Or did
Exactly.
them.
Yeah. No, I know. And staying at nice hotels, and it was I'll just say from my point of view, all the drummers that I was working with at that time that I was meeting, and I'd go pick up at a hotel to bring to the Zildjian factory. It was typically the Holiday Inn in Mansfield, near Great Woods, which is where, that was like the regular spot where the bands would stay. But it was, a handful of you guys would stay in Boston at the Four Seasons. So
Right.
like you, Ringo, Charlie Watts, that's about it. At the Four
Yeah.
Seasons. Yeah. Anyway,
I played with Ringo once. Ringo seems like a really nice guy.
yeah, he is. He is. He's Ringo, he's a character.
Yeah. We played behind him somewhere where when he had that band, when he was kind of he would sing. I think Keltner was the actual drummer, but we did a gig where we were the rhythms. Jimmy's band was the rhythm section, and it was him and James Taylor or something. It was really fun. He was very complimentary, and he was totally sweet. Like, although I've met, like we had played with, I'm now met with Paul too, and they're really nice. Like you just don't,
Yeah.
Paul's really funny. He's like, you kind of shake his hand. He's like, yeah, I know I'm Paul. We'll get over that.
Yeah.
I'm not usually into that star thing. I don't really care. But then when you're meeting those guys, you're like, wow, this is, it's kind of like you can't help but be impressed, or something. And they're
Yeah.
such nice guys. It's like really, it's just unassuming.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never met Paul, but I would be I'd be actually way worse than that, Roger. I would be just completely gaga. I would. I would. I mean, and I want to talk about that too. The my gummies just kicked in video, and Paul playing on that song, and we'll get to that in a second. But to jump back a second, so you were living in St. Louis at the time, and you and Pete's brother Jim, And Jay too. Was Jay the official keyboard player? Jay Oliver was the keyboard player in PM as well.
He
Sort
was
of
the unofficial keyboard player. He would do some of the studio stuff, but then when we played live, we would actually not have a keyboard player, or and we would use a the QX1 computer thing with a bunch of with like uh, keyboard
sequences.
parts that we
Yeah.
played.
Oh, that's funny.
So I would wear headphones and play with the QX1 and the click. It was actually really good for your time because you playing live with the click is back then it was first coming on, right? Like people were just starting to do that. And it was like, oh, it
Yeah,
was really good.
that's great. And so I knew part of that story. So it's your relationship with Jimmy began with you doing this record, and that was sometime in 1989. And then he invited you to come on tour that summer, and then it just was Ralph McDonald playing percussion at that time in the band, or did he come after you?
He came after like 3 or 4 or 5 years later. Then there was always kind of this, it might have been even more than that, but there were always the percussion chair was kind of a revolving door of different people until, and then I think Ralph said he wanted to do it, and he had played for Jimmy years ago on some records and stuff. So then I think Ralph said, I want to do it, and Jimmy got him, and then it became Ralph till he passed.
Yeah. That I wasn't sure when he came in. I just remember he was there. I wasn't sure if he was there when I first met you in '89, but I remember, yeah, a few years later. And maybe you had told me. I remember going to a show and meeting him for the first time and going, "Holy shit, Ralph McDonald playing percussion!" Like, you know. And for people that don't know who Ralph he was an absolute legendary percussionist, songwriter. Um, did all those Roberta Flack, wrote a bunch of her hit songs or co-wrote them, and worked with, Steve Gadd and stuff. And, it's just such a part of that a fabric in that scene. And so it must have been a blast playing with him.
Yeah, it was great. At first, it was kind of intimidating because I was, I grew up listening to stuff and Steve Gadd, and I was like, oh my God, he's gonna hate me, because I'm not Steve Gadd.
He was such a nice guy. He was such a chill guy. I mean,
Yeah,
I
but then it was like I was like, yeah, it's okay, we'll get along.
but he must have been really easy to work with. I mean, just in terms of just how great a player he was, that he could just fall into a groove. I got to think pretty instantly with you guys working together.
Yeah, it's Jimmy had a really good band. I mean, way better than I mean, everybody in there is like a world class player, and it's like you play anything.
Yeah, yeah, it
So
was
it's
it was
very easy.
absolutely a world class band. I mean, you would go. I mean, you would go there because it's Jimmy Buffett, and you want to hear all those great songs, and then you get blown away by this incredible band. And kudos to him for putting together such a great band, and hiring great musicians. So we'll talk about the new record, which drops this Friday, right? I guess, right? The new November 3rd.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Equal strain on all parts. And I didn't know that, Roger, when I reached out to you. I just, you had sent me the clip on My Gummies Just Kicked In. And then I realized the record actually comes out this Friday. So the timing is really, really, fortuitous on this. So
It's almost like we're a marketing department.
it's almost like that. Yeah. So if anybody hasn't seen I'm gonna put the in the link here. I'm gonna put the video to My Gummies Just Kicked In, the YouTube video. It's fantastic, and it's the making behind the scenes of that song. Um, my big question is: were you and Paul tracking live at the same time? Did you guys play together?
No, I wish, but Jim actually played the original part in the studio when you see that, and then Jimmy got Paul to do it, and Paul wanted to do it, but they did that in LA, and
I see.
he's on did Paul playing bass on the track, but he didn't do it when I was there. I
I
just
see.
get the thrill of that he played with me at some point. You know?
That hey, that works, man. That's okay. No, I wondered that. And they do a great job of. I mean, it feels like you guys are all together in the studio at the same time
Yeah,
playing.
they made it look really that way, which is cool.
Yeah, but that makes sense, Roger. I mean, that's kind of how things are now, and I think people understand that, And he's Paul McCartney, so he you know who knows what he was doing, but um, it's a great song, and it's so great to see him and Jimmy and just the fun you guys were having, and you sound great on the song, by the way, as usual.
Mm. Well, the cool part is that Pete and I and Tina actually wrote the song with Jimmy.
That's great.
Yeah,
That,
so then that makes it more fun for me. Like, well, I wrote a song that Paul McCartney played bass on.
yeah, that's pretty great. That's pretty great to be able to say that. When you contribute to writing, like whether it's with Jimmy, or are you contributing like lyrics and melody, or both, or some part of the lyrics, some part of the melody, or the chord
It's
structures?
both. It's I mean, I write both, so yeah, yeah. In that case, all Jimmy had was the title, and he wanted it to be a certain kind of feel, like the way the tempo is or whatever, right? So he kind of went like, this is what I want, and then and we went off to the races, and he loved it the first, and we had sketched out. Normally, the way I write with Jimmy is I would do a demo and I would sketch out lyrics that I would sing, and then knowing that I'm just sort of building a little roadmap and that Jimmy's going to change stuff, or so it's like getting it to a certain point, and then he would go, okay, well, I like that, but I'm going to work on the verse or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. That's great. That's a nice peek into the process there. I know you had written a number of songs over the years with Jimmy. Contributed to records.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Up until a few years ago, I was the songwriter who had the most co-writes with Jimmy.
No kidding.
I didn't know this. Somebody told me that. And then McAnally surpassed me in a couple of years, but it was okay.
That's great, man. Well, that's how you can afford to buy a building in Nashville and have your son rent it from you.
That's that's part of it.
As part of it. That's nice. That's a beautiful thing. No, and I think that's a great lesson though for people, and all the time I've known you, you're much more than a drummer, and I think an important lesson for people that really want to make a career in music, is that if you can contribute to the songwriting, if you can do more than play an instrument and be, a bigger part of the process, um, obviously it's beneficial in many ways. And I was going to say it. I don't mean to keep talking here, but it also, I have to think, increases your value, right, to Jimmy and the organization as a songwriter. You're not just a drummer. You're an integral part of the whole process.
Yeah, I think it's lucky for me, and I like doing it, and probably one of the reasons I stayed or ended up playing with Jimmy so long is that I got to be part of I wasn't just the drummer. He encouraged, if he liked your writing, he encouraged you to be part of the team, sort of.
Yeah,
Whereas if you were playing like for the Eagles, you don't get to do that. Like they don't, they're like, you're just a drummer.
yeah.
Maybe. I
exactly.
mean, I don't know. I don't play with the Eagles, but I don't guess that they would let you participate in that.
I think you're dead.
But I think your point is, well, your the point about a person coming up in the business now is that you can't just be an instrumental. Well, you can, but I mean, why limit yourself by limited, don't limit yourself if you can avoid it, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. But I think you're right on with a band like the Eagles. I think it's a very safe assumption to say that you're hired to play, whether it's drums or keyboards or you're a sideman. They're not going to invite you into the writing process. Um, you know, Mick Jagger and
No,
Keith Richards are the same way. They're the songwriters in that band.
yeah, and I get that. Everybody has their own, way of doing things.
Yeah, yeah. Jimmy just always struck me as a. It doesn't surprise me that you said that, Roger. That he encouraged you to write. You know what I mean? He just seemed like a very inclusive person. I didn't know him personally. You introduced me to him a couple of times, just a handshake type thing, and but you certainly got that vibe when you saw him that he loved what he did, loved making people happy. You know what I mean? Loved going out there and making the audience happy, and just had a lot of fun doing what he did. And I think that's infectious. When you see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's Jimmy's. He was very smart to do that, have that kind of way of thinking, because you get other people's talent or ideas that you wouldn't have thought of, or maybe, I mean, all you're doing is making your end product better. It's like you don't have
Yeah.
to, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
why limit your, and you're absolutely right. He is, what you saw was Jimmy. It wasn't fake or what, if you don't like it, you don't like it or whatever. But I mean, he wasn't manufactured. Like,
No.
he loved to go out there and be Jimmy Buffett and play, and that was him. That persona was his part of him. And, he didn't walk around like that all the time, but I mean, it wasn't fake or made up or anything. That was him.
Yeah. Yeah. You could feel that. I mean, you really could. You could feel that he was. I would always come away like that. He was just so comfortable in his own skin that he could just come out there and he had and he had you guys. He had such a great band that had to be such a big part of his comfort zone that he could, and he was great. He was great personally at what he did, but he could just he had this cushion to fall back on with you guys. You know what I mean? And he could just do whatever he wanted. I have to just mention, I think you might remember this. One of the times you introduced me, it was at Great Woods, what used to be called Great Woods. And you and I were standing in the outside in the backstage area. And you remember there were like these sliding glass doors that led into the dressing rooms. And we were standing talking and he just slid the door open and like put his head out and just went, "Hey, what's going on out here?" And I just was sort of frozen. And you introduced me and you said, "Hey, Jimmy, this is John DeChristopher with Zildjian." And he, of course, puts his hand and goes, "Hello, John DeChristopher with Zildjian," and shakes my hand. And then when you guys got on stage, you got on
Yeah, I think
stage.
I actually, you're describing it. I actually remember that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'll never forget it because you got on stage, and a few songs into the set, he was introducing a song, and I guess you started, and he said, "Roger, hit that Zildjian cymbal," or whatever, through the audience, and I went, "Holy shit," But no, I mean, he would just make you feel so good at a show, It's so important.
I think that's why it was popular.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so I'm going to jump backwards a second. You continued to live. You live in Nashville now, but you stayed in St. Louis for a long time. And when Jimmy wasn't touring in the summer, PM continued to record and make records. And and that's Pete Mayer and his brother Jim and you. And I remember you did a gig in Boston once. In fact, I don't know, sometime in the 90s, I feel like you guys did a show in Cambridge or something, and Colin and I
Right,
came out to see you.
right. I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah. And
that
and
was
uh,
fun.
and I just, for everybody watching, if you're not familiar, and I know the music is available through, I'm sure through iTunes or Spotify or, but it's a great band. I mean, it's a really, I mean, in fact, you also did a gig once on a night off at this place on the water, like in Quincy, Massachusetts, one time during the summer. You invited me out to this. God, it was so long ago, Roger, but it was like the night before you guys were in Boston for a few days before the Buffett gig, and you guys were playing somewhere like at this. I can't explain. It was almost like a Key West kind of place, right on the water in
Oh,
Boston.
yeah, I don't remember that, but that's not unbelievable. I
Yeah,
think I know where you're talking about. It was down, yeah. Somebody had set up like a stage. Was that the one you were talking about,
yeah.
or was that at a club?
No, it was out. It was like outside. It's become a big hot spot now. This people watching might know what it is. It's this waterfront place in Quincy, Massachusetts, and um, but it was wild. I remember going there like on a Thursday night or a Wednesday night, and it was just packed with people. And yeah, it's like, wow, okay, guy's got a following.
I don't know if they were there to see us. They might have just been there to party.
Maybe a little of both, but it was always. I guess what I'm trying to say, it was always great to hear the band with Jimmy, but then as you know, as the band as PM too. It was a,
Uh,
yeah, great band.
well, I would always tease you. I was like, I can really play.
I know you did. I know, and I knew you could, because there would always be a moment in the night where the band would just play. You guys would just stretch, right? I mean, I felt like there was always a tune where, and you'd switch to, if you'd been playing match grip all night, you'd switch to traditional grip, and that's when I knew, like, okay, some shit's gonna go down now. All right, he's in Tony mode.
Yeah, right. I wish.
No, I knew you could play. You know that. I mean, that's one of those things that I think drummers, you can tell that about somebody, even with just the slightest little thing that they do. When someone's playing something that seems relatively simple, at least for me, I could always go, okay, well, this guy obviously has got a lot of things at his disposal, that he's just choosing only to use a few of these things because that's what the gig calls for, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
You can tell, like, somebody is like, oh, they're you know and also it's really not that easy to play simple, not the right stuff. I mean,
yeah,
you sort of
exactly.
have to get your head out of the drum world and into what does the song need, what's everybody else playing, that kind of shit.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a huge lesson for any drummer, is to realize that to play that gig with Jimmy Buffett, to play and have it feel the way it felt, great time, complimenting the rest of the band, complimenting Jimmy, giving Jimmy that foundation, um, grooving with the bass player, locking in. I mean, look at what Steve Gadd does with James Taylor. It's not, you know, he has moments where he gets to really play, but for the most part, he's grooving and he's just making it sound great. And that's what the job is, you know?
Yeah, and he's totally happy doing it. Like, he's like, man, let's groove.
That's right.
I mean, that's
Exactly.
the beauty of somebody like Steve, is that he's just is like, I'll play time all night. I don't care. I don't need to. I mean, the
Yeah.
only people that like drum solos, drummers.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. In
And
fact, I
especially cute women do not like drum solos. Don't let them kid you.
yeah, we have a rule in my band, in fact, that it's a drum solo free zone.
Well, I figured from you, yeah, you're kind of you like you want to play the groove, that's or the song,
Yeah, that's kind of where I come from. But I mean, I can appreciate a good drum solo, absolutely, but it's not something I can listen to all night for sure. I like a
So,
nice pocket, nice
well,
groove.
I like a cool drum solo if it's got some music in it. If it's just a bunch of chops, it's interesting for a few minutes, like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, and then it's like, okay, well, because it's harder to make something into music, where you're like, wow, that's like, like a Tony Williams early Tony solo is like, you're just sitting there going, wow, man, that's pretty, that's incredible. He's 19 and it's so musical,
Yeah,
and it's like, it's like a Picasso painting. It's abstract, but it's like he's taking all the history of jazz drumming and, I mean, it's just, I mean, I'm raving about Tony, but those are my favorite drum solos. If I wanted to, the ones on Four and More, they're just amazing. I'm like, I know what they are. They're little Alan Dawson exercises, basically. But he
yeah.
does it so it's got so much thing to it. It's like this minimalistic thing. It's really awesome to
I,
me.
I I know exactly what you mean. I was just the other day. There's this YouTube video that it's been out there forever from the '70s of Tony with Stan Getz and Chick Corea and Stanley Clark at Montreux. I'm trying to think of who else is in the band, but it's a pretty famous video. And I saw it somewhere, and there's a section Tony takes about a minute, 55-second or a minute long drum solo, and it's just so perfect because it's just it never gets boring. It's never him repeating the same thing. It's just all these great little Tonyisms,
Right.
all those little da 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 I mean, it's just like, yeah. And the sound, and we can go off on a Tony tangent all day, I know, but the sound he got from his drums too, I think for me was like such a special part of it was the way the drums were tuned, the cymbals,
Oh
everything.
yeah.
Yeah,
He was badass.
he was badass. Yeah, he was. But you're a badass too. So I read somewhere that the Coral Reefer band may possibly go on. Is that? I mean, I don't know if that's even something you could talk about or comment on, but I think I read Mac might have said that it's possible.
Yeah, I saw that too. It was in Billboard.
Okay, yeah, maybe that's where it was.
I'm like, I didn't know that.
Wow.
I mean, we've been talking about it, or I've talked to Mac about it, and it would be cool if we could do it and make it work and stuff. I mean, I don't know how it would feel to do it when you're playing that stuff and Jimmy's not there, but I think there's an audience for it, and it would be fun to do because the band would still be the same, maybe, and
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it's a possibility. I hope it happens. I mean, there is a couple gigs they're talking about that have already been kind of set up, but I don't beyond that, I don't know. There's like a tribute thing at the Hollywood Bowl in April. I don't know the date yet, but it's something like that. I think they're waiting to do that, and then then everybody's gonna sort of regroup and see how that worked or whatever.
Yeah, I would think there'd be no shortage of like guest artists that would want to come in and do little like guest appearances, and
Right. I think that's what this is going to be, like us playing, and then there's going to probably be, like Kenny Chesney and, all these guys that were fans of Jimmy's or friends
yeah.
with Jimmy. James might do it, or, who knows.
He was so beloved, man. I mean, it was, you could see the sort of outreach by everybody, just it was beautiful to see the spectrum of how many people just, of famous musicians and just of course fans, needless to say, but um He was so
Yeah, I'll
loved
never.
and
One
respected.
time, Dennis Chambers called me up and wanted tickets to the Buffett show. I was like, "Are you kidding?"
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
"You would want to come to the Buffett show?" He was like, "Yeah, man."
Oh, that's so great. Oh my God. Yeah, see? Yeah. I could see him digging the music and going and appreciating, how the what the band brought to the music. That's cool. So talking about the concerts and playing live, did you guys keep the same arrangements pretty much year after year? Did you ever go back and redo some of the tunes? Like all you, Jimmy had so many hits, and I know you probably had to play a certain number of them at each show to keep. You want to give the fans what they want to hear, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we would keep the arrangements of some of them, but Jimmy would always be tweaking around, like, let's have a percussion solo before the start of this tune, or let's stick this tune together with that one, and he would always do a lot of that, or wanted to do a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah. And stuff like tempos. Were there ever variations where he'd say, "Let's play this one a little faster," or "Let's play this one a little
Oh yeah,
slower"?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did that a number of times. Like let's change this to a reggae feel. That was a big. We would always. That was kind of a running joke. Like we would when he'd be like, "What can we do this?" And we'd be like, "We can make it into a reggae feel." Got to be like a standard joke kind of. But yeah, we would do lots of that. Like, mostly except for a tune like "Come Monday." But even that, he would sometimes do it like just with him and a couple of guitars and Ralph, or then sometimes it was with the band, or that kind of stuff. It was always trying to make the show, different from last year,
yeah, yeah,
which is hard to do when you're playing, you've got to play the same, there's 10 songs he felt like he had to play, and then he would the rest, there was probably 20 songs in a show or whatever, 24. And then you could put in some other stuff that was maybe new or something you wanted to do that you didn't do for a while or whatever.
yeah. That's what I thought. I thought I having seen you guys so many times, I felt like he would, which I think is the right thing to do. Play those kind of staples that people, even though the big fans probably, I'm guessing like the people that consider themselves the true parrot heads probably were like, no, I don't like the hits. I like the deep cuts, so to speak. But you people want to hear Margaritaville and they want to hear Cheeseburger in Paradise and Come Monday and all those songs.
Yeah. And, you'd be stupid not to play them. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Jimmy was a very much like a I'm here for the audience guy.
yeah,
Like was not like well, screw them, I'm gonna do this. It was like whatever the audience wants, that's what I play,
yeah.
that because
That's
they're
great.
paying me they're paying good money to see me, and that's what we're gonna play for them.
Absolutely. I think the best artists see it that way. You know what I mean? I won't name the ones that I remember seeing that would take that, like, exactly what you said, that tack of like, we're going to play what we like and not what the fans want to hear. And it's kind of a drag when you go to a show and you're like, wow, I one of my favorite bands with a drummer who's a very good friend of mine, would often do that. And I'd leave there going, shit, you guys didn't play one like sort of hit. Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a mistake from a business point of view in the long run, because people are paying money to see you, and
Yeah.
it's it's usually for a reason.
Right. That's right. Exactly. And a song like Margaritaville, you'd have 20,000 people singing every word of the song, like right there with him. And, what's better than that? I mean, that's what you want. So, are there any things you're working on right now, Roger? Any projects that you might want to share with us, like personally or with Pete and PM or?
Yes. Well, actually, I'm doing another jazz album we just did the last session last week. So that's what I've been working on, and it's going to be called, it's like an instrumental jazz thing, you know. It's going to be called cinema because it's kind of like movie sounding, cinematic. I don't know. Somebody said it sounds like cinematic jazz, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm going to use that.
I like
So
it.
yeah, Pete played on it, and then you probably don't know the other people, but Tommy Kennedy played bass. He plays with Dave all the time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he's another one of my old cohorts from St. Louis. We all grew up together. And Pete and I wrote all the songs, and it's gonna be really, really good.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm thinking of not only, but I mean, not doing a CD release and just do vinyl and then the streaming download, you know, digital, but not because people don't really buy CDs. They just use the streaming part, or the vinyl thing is kind of has a
Right.
life of its own coming back, I think.
I think that's a great idea. I think you're absolutely right that it's either, like you say, old school, like, superior vinyl sound, or digital downloads. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also in a case like the music like this it's very the sonic of it, you know, it's there's a lot of room to hear, like especially it's got a lot of cymbal stuff on it. I'll have to send it to Zildjian.
Yeah. Yeah. You should. You absolutely should. Hopefully they're watching this right now. um,
Listen, guys, these are your cymbals.
I'm glad you mentioned Tom Kennedy because I made a note to mention Tom. I got to know Tom a little bit through, I guess mainly through Dave from seeing him touring with Dave Weckel's band. But I knew you guys were all friends from St. Louis, and what a monster bass player he is, man.
Oh yeah,
And
he's great.
sweetheart of a guy too. And
Yeah.
um, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning about it was just funny that, well, not funny, but I remember Dave Weckel calling. I think he probably called Colin at the time because I didn't know Dave well at that, and when I had just started at Zildjian that summer. But he recommended his friend from St. Louis, Roger Guth, Jimmy Buffett, and but I feel like you and I hit it off pretty instantly, and I just remember like you were, and I love Dave. I've had Dave on the show a couple of times, but you're so different. You know what I mean? Like you are just like this. You're like a guy I grew up with from my neighborhood when I met you. We're just goofing around about shit, and
Well,
it took
I always loved you, Johnny.
back at you, buddy. And Dave and I got there eventually. But I hope he's not watching now. He might take that the wrong way, but no, but he was maybe a little more serious, and that's okay.
I actually just had coffee with him last week. He was in town and he called me up, and I haven't seen him for a long time. And he was like, "Come on, let's have coffee, man."
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great. I
that's cool.
I hung out with him last year at PASIC. Just about a year ago, he was in India at the Percussive Arts, convention, and yeah, we hung out one night in the bar, and then had breakfast like the next morning, and yeah, it's great to be reconnected with Dave, after all these years of knowing him, and yeah, and his playing is just continues to get better and better and better, of course.
Yeah, he's not going to get worse.
No. Me, on the other hand,
Yeah.
hey, I have a question. A friend of mine, Mike Rogello, local drummer here in Boston, asked if Ralph McDonald got a writing credit for Margaritaville. That was probably written.
No, he wasn't. Jimmy wrote that either by himself or with somebody else. It wasn't Ralph.
Yeah, way before Ralph was in the band,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay. But he did get a writing credit for um, one of Roberta Flack's big hits. Where is the Love, I think?
Oh
Or
yeah,
where?
yeah. He was a
Yeah,
co-writer.
yeah. Boy,
Just the two of us. I think he
just,
was co-writer
yeah.
because
See, that's,
he always used to brag about the check he would get. I'd be like, God, yeah, no.
Every time I would see him, when I would come, I'd come to the gig and I'd see you before the show up, behind your drums, and Ralph would be up there, and I remember, when I got to know him, and I knew what his history was, and I thought, no wonder this guy's smiling all the time. He's touring with Jimmy Buffett all summer on a great gig, probably getting paid, serious, and then he's got all that mailbox money waiting when he gets home. There's these big ass checks waiting for him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. God bless him, man. God rest his soul. He was a sweetheart. He was a sweetheart.
Yeah.
So Roger, back to your record. When do you think that will be out? When can we look for that?
Probably February. We have to mix it and do some overdubbing and stuff. And Pete does this Christmas tour, so that's kind of getting in the way of my record, but I can't really fault him for that.
Will you be playing drums with Pete on the Christmas tour?
No, I did it once, and I don't really like Christmas music that much.
Okay, fair enough.
I told Pete, I'm like, dude, I love you, man, but I just can't play a little drummer boy, and I just don't want to do it.
You guys go back a long way, so he's got to understand and respect that.
Yeah, and he actually uses an old friend of mine, a student, was a student of mine years ago. He's a good drummer named Miles Vanderveer. So, and Miles plays great, and
Great.
it's all good.
That's great.
Although
That's
now might want the gig back since I don't have a gig. I'm like, yeah, now he's not going to get rid of Miles.
Oh, that's too funny. Hey, I made a note also. I want to ask you, just talking about, I'm going to jump backwards to the video, to the my gummies kicked in video, just kicked in video. Are you playing a Craviotto snare in that?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. And that's the actual like drum that you used on the track. I mean, what we're hearing on the song is that drum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I for some reason DW lets me get away with the Craviotto thing, which is okay. I guess they don't really care anyway, right? Like, who am I? Because
No,
I
but
told Garrison and I think they're buddies with the Craviotto company, because I have a Craviotto snare drum that Johnny Craviotto made before he died, when he was first working with DW, I think.
yes, that's right. They collaborated, and I think John Good and Johnny were very close, and yeah, and I think all that stuff is, using a different snare drum, I think is acceptable these days, different from the drums that you endorse.
Yeah, I mean, I heard them, and I heard it, and they were like, "You want one of these?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So I have a few of them, and I started using it on the tour, and it was just, I was like, "Oh, I love this." And the DW snare drum is great. It's just the Craviottos are really good.
Yeah. So
There's just
is that a newer one, Roger? Is it one you got since Steve?
it's like, I don't know, probably 10 years old or something.
Okay. Yeah. So it was before Steve Maxwell took it over, because now I think they're making Craviotto in Nashville.
Yeah, they are. I
Yeah.
think they moved to their, I've never been over there, but I think they moved their production thing over here.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Um,
a lot of the guys that do the real country acts have Craviotto sets. It's a big.
yeah. Beautiful drums. Absolutely beautiful drums. I mean, like a serious
Yeah, I would
piece.
like to have a little Craviotto jazz set. That would be fun.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Be a nice little kit to have for jazz. And I wanted
Yeah,
to ask you too, the record, did you record your record in your home studio, or did you record it at a studio in Nashville? Is it
yeah. It's just a couple studios here, Sony Tree and Omni. I have a little soundproof drum room in the garage, but it's not big enough to have other musicians in it.
got it? Yep. I just know so many people are making great records at home now, in home studios, but there's so many, you're in Nashville, so
Oh my God, there's a ton of
yeah.
them. I don't really like I like to play with the other people. I don't like overdubbing, like everybody send me their parts. I don't really like that,
Yeah.
especially for this kind of music. If you were doing a pop tune, that's different, but where you kind of want more of a give and take interaction, it's hard to do when I think, when you're not playing together.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had Joe Vitale on with me last week, and in fact, we were talking about Southern Cross, the original version, CSN version, and we mentioned you playing it with Jimmy all those years, playing eighth notes, and but he was commenting on, as he referred to it, build a record, which is becoming so common these days, as you're talking about, and it's certainly a way to do it, but he said the same thing. It's just there's nothing like everybody being in the room at the same time and feeling the sort of vibe of everybody and playing off each other and
Yeah, I mean, I'm old school that way. I think there's something to that, I mean, because otherwise it just sounds so perfect and manufactured. It's like, well, okay. It's like you're listening to all the electronic music. It's like you don't really listen to that music going, well, what's the drummer doing? Or, how's it feeling? Because it's the vibe is totally different. You're there to dance with the pretty woman or whatever you're doing, or, take ecstasy or whatever you want to do. But if you're listening to a Crosby, Stills, and Nash thing, you want it. The actual musicians played it, so it's got a different.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm like you. I don't record like that, but the idea of just providing tracks. And again, I know it's an accepted practice and it's how a lot of people do it now and make a living, but it seems so sterilized, so kind of, yeah,
Yeah, it's a shame. I think we've lost something in that, but I don't. The business has changed, and people.
yeah,
It's cheaper. You can just hire the drummer and he plays the track. You don't eat up the studio time. I mean, that's just the way people do it.
yeah, yeah, true. Well, we can wrap things up. I didn't know if there was anything more you wanted to cover just to talk about that you're doing. We talked about your record. We talked about 34 years with Jimmy Buffett and the great times that you had. And
When are we gonna get together? That's I'd love to hang with you again, Johnny.
I know, me too, me too. I don't know when I'm going to be down in Nashville anytime, but that would, or if you find yourself up this way, I don't know if you'd be up in the Boston area anytime, but
I hope so.
I,
Hopefully,
I
if it's choral Reefer band things, we would probably play in Boston. I love Boston.
well, I would love to see you. I would love to get together. And I know it's been too long and we had many great hangs back in the day. And I thought about this too. I think you'll remember this. We went, because you'd come to Boston and because you played with Jimmy Buffett, you'd spend a week at the Four Seasons to play one show. And and you'd have lots of like all the high budget tours that would come through town. And I remember us going to dinner at this really great restaurant. Kelly remembered it, Via Mata, which was kind of behind the Four Seasons.
Oh yeah, I love that place.
Remember that place? Because I think you knew it
Yeah.
when I said we're going to go to this place. You're like, oh, I love that place. And we went back to the Four Seasons afterward to sit in the bar, and the Stones were in town at the time. And Charlie Watts was in the bar and came over to the table and said hello. And his tech at the time, I think, was with us. But this would have been 20. This would have been 20 plus years ago. And anyway, he came over. He was having a coffee or something. Charlie had stopped drinking a long time ago and came over and said hello. And I'm sure I introduced you to him. And we were feeling pretty good, you and me. And the next day I spoke with him on the phone, and he said something like, did you have fun last night? Did you get home okay? Kind of like, kind of giving me a little. I thought like, did I make a complete fool of myself? Probably. I don't know.
Nah, I wish I could have gotten to know him better. He seemed like a really nice guy. You knew him pretty well, right,
I
Charlie?
did. Yeah, I did. He was just a beautiful, beautiful, great human. Yeah. Yeah.
I love the story. I just heard one story when that they always just Jimmy's tour manager would tell me that Mick called him one night up at like they were, it was late in a hotel room. It was like, come down, called him up
Oh,
on the phone or something. And supposedly Charlie came down to the bar in his robe, punched Mick, and went back up his room.
I've heard the story. I never asked Charlie if it's true, but I've heard, yeah, I've heard like a variation of it. He called Charlie and said like, "Where's
Yeah,
my drummer?"
right.
And
Like they're
yeah,
partying and he's asleep, and then he comes down and is like, "Don't ever call me again."
yeah, yeah, uh, yeah. Never piss off a drummer. That's the more all you folks watching at home that aren't drummers, never piss off a drummer.
It's not a good idea.
Not a good idea. I got to tell you before we sign off, Dave McGee says he's a big fan. He said, I met Eric Darkin a couple of years ago after a great Mac show. So,
Oh, cool. Yeah, Eric's the current percussionist, and Eric's a great percussionist.
oh, cool. Well, thanks, Dave.
So much, John. It's great to see you.
You too, Roger. My pleasure, buddy. Hang with me if you would for 1 second and I'll end the stream and we'll say goodbye. But thank you for being here today against your will. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of talking about myself, but it's okay. I love you.
I love you too, buddy. And I think our connection seemed to get better as we went along. So
It
this is
did,
great.
yeah.
It was a little weird, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for being patient, everybody. Big hand for Roger Guth, my dear friend, almost 35 years. Great drummer. Hang tight, Roger. All right, well, that's my show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like, leave me a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. And the podcast is available on all the podcast platforms, so download it. And remember, no drummers are ever harmed on Live from My Drum Room or Track Talk. And drummers, when in doubt, leave it out. All right. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again real soon. See ya.